Hey, what's good, y'all? Thank you for joining me on another edition of the Liberty Cast. I'm your host, Big E. We're going to talk about more Second Amendment news and not just the shenanigans going on in Virginia, but some other states that are getting into the mix as well. We'll talk about the dust-up between Fauxcahontas and Bernie Sanders, which was entertaining, but it further highlights the flaw in Hiawatha and her campaign. But, not to be outdone, Bernie's campaign shows a few chinks in the armor as well. Then the Government Accountability Office declares that President Trump violated the law by withholding aid to Ukraine, and social media exploded with Trump Derangement Syndrome flare-ups. It was incredible. We'll take a look at the social media TDS phenomenon and a whole lot more straight ahead.
Let's get it on!
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment sanctuary movement has really taken off. Lobby Day is in Virginia on January 20th, and the Virginia Citizens Defense League they've been using Lobby Day to fight for the Second Amendment and have been successful in doing so over the years. They've been doing it for a long time. Now, ahead of this year's Lobby Day, Governor Blackface has declared a state of emergency, which, when in effect, bans weapons from places of shelter. Well, the State House is a place of shelter. I can understand that, I guess. But he declared the entire 14-acre area of the Capitol grounds a shelter. I don't know how that could possibly be. I mean, it's 14 acres. Come on. But the VCDL, they challenged it in court. But rather than rule on it, the court said that they didn't file the proper paperwork and just didn't bother to hear the case. Come on. It is so obvious what's going on with that. I mean, it was a stretch to begin with his declaration, and then have the courts just say, no big deal. I mean, you know what's going on in Virginia. But not only was it a stretch to enact this state of emergency, but
It's a trap!
They're expecting tens of thousands of people at Lobby Day. And make no mistake, there's going to be leftists there, and they will be baiting gun owners into doing something that will play in the media like Second Amendment advocates and gun owners are nuts. One Virginia lawmaker already said as much, and we'll get into that later on. But regardless, we can't take that bait. Now, Matt Bracken, he wrote a great piece in American Partisan, and it's worth the read. Now, I always knew that there was the likelihood, almost a certainty, that Antifa and other radicals, Moms Demand, were going to be on hand to disrupt proceedings, because the VCDL and Second Amendment gun owners in general, we're not looking for trouble. We're not looking to cause a scene. Antifa, on the other hand, and groups like it, that's what they're all about. They're all about causing a scene. And if they can cause a scene and make Second Amendment advocates look like the aggressors, even when everyone's going to know that we weren't. But if they can do that, the media is going to spin it that way. And that will be the narrative going forward for the entirety of this Second Amendment debate. And even though I already knew that, I mean, that was baked into the cake once this whole thing started. But Matt Bracken's piece got me thinking that maybe it's not such a good idea. I mean, it's going to happen. There's no calling it off at this point. So I just hope that everyone keeps their heads and doesn't give the leftist media what they're looking for. Because if they do, that is going to set things back tremendously. And it could set the table for what's happening in Virginia to happen across the country. And I don't mean the Second Amendment sanctuary counties, because that's a good thing. What I'm talking about is the legislature and the governor all being run by leftists, which will, as I said, set the stage for a whole host of anti-Second Amendment legislation getting shoved down our collective throats. So for all my listeners in Virginia, if you're planning on attending Lobby Day, my advice is don't. But if you must, go into it knowing that somebody is going to try and bait you into pulling your weapon. And if you know that's going to happen ahead of time, then it's probably a good idea that you don't go. Because, I mean, what's one of the things that you learn when you're taking your concealed carry courses, when you're learning about defensive tactics and defensive gun use and things like that? Don't put yourself in the position to have to use it. Don't put yourself in a position where there's a likelihood that you're going to use it. You don't go into neighborhoods where you know there's a chance you might get attacked. So even though it's a good cause, why would you put yourself in that position? Anyway, moving on to a brighter side of this conversation. West Virginia has actually proposed to annex any Second Amendment sanctuary counties in Virginia that want to secede and join West Virginia. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but West Virginia and Virginia used to be one state. In 1861, as the Civil War was breaking out, the westernmost counties in the state of Virginia decided to form their own state, secede from the state of Virginia, and form a separate state loyal to the Union. Now, West Virginia has generously offered Second Amendment sanctuary counties in the state of Virginia the opportunity to join West Virginia, where they actually respect people's Second Amendment rights. It's never going to happen. The Virginia legislature is never going to vote to approve that. But it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing to speculate about. And who knows? You never know. Just like back in 1861, when the state of Virginia voted to allow counties loyal to the Union to separate from the state, kick them out. I suppose it's a possibility that the state legislature could vote to allow it to happen. I seriously doubt it, though. So not only has West Virginia decided to extend the offer to counties in Virginia to allow them to join West Virginia, they've also got one of their own Second Amendment sanctuary counties on the books now. And that adds them to the list of states with Second Amendment sanctuary counties, including Oregon, Washington State, Illinois, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, New Jersey, Tennessee, Kentucky, Rhode Island, which shocked me, and obviously, leading the pack, Virginia. Now, we talked about North Carolina last week in Surry County, how they voted to be a sanctuary county because they border a number of counties in Virginia, but also Branscombe County, Durham County, Forsyth County, Mecklenburg County, Orange County, Wake County, Davidson County, Lincoln County, and Wilkes County all have Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions on the books now as well. Most of those states, except for New Mexico, haven't reached the level of Virginia with 90+% of all their counties passing such a resolution. But it's something, because New Mexico was one of the first ones that I heard about. And I think it was probably the first one I mentioned on this show last summer. And Washington has been, well, a couple of counties in Washington anyway have been at the forefront. But again, none of these states like Virginia have had this kind of explosion like Virginia has. New Mexico, they had 29, I believe, of 33 of their counties pass these resolutions. And like I said, they were one of the first ones that I heard about. But what disappoints me is Texas. Texas only has 8 counties out of 254, the most counties of any state in the country. Only 8 have passed a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. Another 6 have some action towards it, where there's a vote scheduled or they're discussing it. But that's 14 out of 254. in Texas. That to me is just unacceptable. I know Texas has a reputation for being reverential towards the Second Amendment, but Bloomberg and the rest of the totalitarian left are working hard to flip that. There was a Gallup poll just last week that said that the issue of gun policy, is more important to Democrats than Republicans by a margin of 20%. Of the people polled, 46% of Democrats view gun policy as a major central issue, as opposed to Republicans at 26%. That to me is a huge concern, because when the Democrats get in power, they are highly motivated. They wasted no time when they gained power in Virginia. They pre-filed bills as pretty much the day after the election. Now, Republicans are less apt to make big moves when they gain power, and that's because they were elected by people who want less government intrusion in their lives. And generally speaking, for conservatives, not so much Republicans, because I know that I've said all along that there's not a whole lot of daylight between the two. But conservatives, when they get into power's not their ultimate goal like it is for the leftists. And generally speaking, that's great. But I think conservatives in the Republican Party need to change tactics. I know a lot of people don't believe that we need to meet the left at the same level and use the same type of tactics that they employ, to stoop to their level, as it were. Bump that. Kill that noise. Fight fire with fire. This is ideological warfare. The time for niceties, the time for pleasantries, the time for Robert's Rules of Order, Marcus of Queensberry rules, that's over. We need to meet them on this ideological battlefield with the same level of intensity that they come with. Because if we're complacent, they will succeed. Not they could succeed. They will succeed if we're too complacent. They're spending a ton of money in Second Amendment strongholds to flip it. And not only are they spending money, but they're trying to discredit Second Amendment advocates and paint us as having mental problems. And I'll have that audio for you on the other side of this quick break. Remember last week when I played some audio for you where there was a public official who was referring to gun owners as little kids? Well, we've identified who that was. That was State Senator Dave Marsden. And he pretty much doubled down on that in an interview he did with Mornings on the Mall, a morning radio show in Virginia.
We were referred to some emails by different listeners who had emailed you, and they shared the response with us. And you do say in this email to one of our listeners, in retrospect, I should have made my comments publicly, just like you said here, but too many of your members and other 2A supporters appear to have mental health issues. We know from our listeners that they were insulted by that and they took offense to that, saying that, insinuating that they have mental health issues. Do you regret putting that in an email?
There are, a significant number of these things were indicative of very unstable people. And this is worrisome. The Second Amendment community is very, very concerned about us approaching the problem as a mental health problem. And this is just indicative of exactly what they're talking about. There are a lot of people who have mental health issues that are engaged on the gun issues, and that's a concern to all of us.
Wow. These people have no respect. No respect for you, no respect for your rights, no respect for the Constitution, nothing. The only thing they respect is their thirst for power and your submission. That's it. All right, let's move on. Did any of you watch the debate last week? No? Well, guess what? Neither did I. And there was really nothing. Well, I tried to watch it, but I just couldn't get through it. And there was nothing really substantive that came from it. And hardly anything interesting during the debate happened anyway. The one thing that happened, the one exchange that was pretty extraordinary, was this one.
Senator Sanders. CNN reported yesterday that, and Senator Warren confirmed in a statement, that in 2018, you told her that you did not believe that a woman could win the election. Why did you say that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on this because this is what Donald Trump and maybe some of the media want. Anybody knows me, knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States. Go to YouTube today. There's a video of me 30 years ago talking about how a woman could become president of the United States. In 2015, I deferred, in fact, to Senator Warren. There was a movement to draft Senator Warren to run for president. And you know what? I stayed back. Senator Warren decided not to run, and I did run afterwards. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. How could anybody in a million years not believe that a woman could become president of the United States?
So Senator Sanders, I do want to be clear here. You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
I disagreed. Bernie is my friend, and I am not here to try to fight with Bernie.
Did you hear the crowd laugh? I mean, even the CNN crowd thought that was ridiculous. And I mean, come on, this is the same network that fed Hillary the questions during her debate with Bernie in 2016. This time, Warren leaks the story to them. And then when they ask the question of Bernie, they completely dismiss his answer. I mean, so I want to be clear. You're denying this. Yes, I'm denying this. So, Senator Warren, how did you feel when Bernie said, what? Come on. If there was ever any doubt, even after the Sandman settlement, if there was ever any doubt that CNN is fake news, that has to be the straw. But nothing else of note, really. I mean, that was pretty spectacular, frankly. But nothing else of note really happened until the end.
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion? We'll have that
Anytime.
discussion. You told me. All right, let's not do it now.
I don't want to get in the middle of it. I just want to say hi, Bernie.
Yeah, good. Okay.
The best part of that, even though that whole thing was fantastic, the best part was Tom Steyer at the end, basically fanboying over Bernie Sanders. It was that that's incredible. But Elizabeth Warren is confronting Bernie Sanders because she says he called her a liar on national TV. Well, guess what? He did. Because you are a liar. You demonstrably lied for decades about being Native American. You submitted a recipe for this powwow chow cookbook, and you plagiarized it from a French chef in the New York Times. You lied about your children going to public school. And then there's this.
I was visibly pregnant. And the principal did what principals did in those days. Wished me luck and hired someone else for the job. I was visibly pregnant. And the principal did what principals did in those days. Wished me luck and hired someone else for the job. I was visibly pregnant. Wished me luck and hired someone else for the job. I was visibly pregnant. Wished me luck and hired someone else for the job. I was visibly pregnant. He wished me luck and hired someone else for the job.
Tip of the hat to Tucker Carlson for that audio. If you watch the video of that, she does the same arm pump every single time she says it. It's ridiculous. So not only did the school come back and say, no, we offered her a contract and we were sad that she declined the contract. So not only did she lie about that, but then there's this.
It was in a public school system, but I worked with the children with disabilities. And I did that for a year. And then that summer, I actually didn't have the education courses, so I was on an emergency certificate, it was called. And I went back to graduate school and took a couple of courses in education and said, I don't think this is going to work out for me. And I was pregnant with my first baby. So I had a baby and stayed home for a couple of years.
That was her in 2007 in an interview where she obviously was talking about her short stint in education. Her lies, I was going to say border on the pathological, but it's straight pathological. She can't help herself. Meanwhile, Bernie is on record saying the exact opposite, that he believes a woman could become president. He deferred to her when she was deciding whether or not to run. Bernie's a lot of things. I don't think he's a pathological liar. Don't get me wrong. He's told some whoppers in his day, but he's had the courage to declare himself a socialist, that he was going to raise taxes and everything else. I doubt very seriously that he told Fauxcahontas that a woman could never be president. For two reasons. One, he is, as I said on record 30 years ago, that he thought a woman could be president. Two, her reaction to his answer to the question. She deflected, she pivoted. She said she wasn't there to fight with Bernie. If someone calls you a liar, as she is alleging, then you're going to fight, national TV or not. Push back, offer some context, quote something. She did none of that. She is a liar. And then in the aftermath of that, they put the Me Too angle on it. Believe all women. She's a proven, demonstrable liar. Who would believe anything she says? Well, there are a few. Jessica Ellis tweeted, "Just FYI, I double-checked and there is no except Elizabeth Warren clause in that whole believe women deal." Oh, my goodness. Neera Tanden, president of Center for American Progress. Believe women, unless it doesn't work for your ambition, apparently. And this one this one is way out there. Amanda Marcotte tweeted, "I think that Warren got the better of Sanders in that exchange, but who knows how it will all play out. I also thought that 8 women accusing Al Franken of groping was rock solid evidence that he's a groper, but apparently a lot of people prefer to believe women love lying." Warren got the better of Sanders? What debate was she watching? It's not that we believe women love lying. People lie. People are flawed beings. They will lie if they think it's going to benefit them. So the Me Too movement has now expanded from believe all women when they accuse someone of sexual assault to now it's just believe all women, period. Come on. Ridiculous. Now, don't think because I'm defending Bernie in this one instance, don't get it twisted. His only redeeming quality is that he's upfront about his totalitarian statist philosophy. He's an avowed socialist. He wants the government to run every aspect of your life. He wants to take your guns as much as anyone does. He doesn't have that reputation because so many people in Vermont would have voted him out if he came out publicly and said that. Being a socialist was bad enough. But now that so many other leftists are on his bandwagon, make no mistake. If he were to get into office, he will come for them, just like all the rest of them. He's not a sympathetic figure. He wants the guns, and then he wants what comes next. Okay, Big E, what comes after taking the guns? Well, why don't we let one of Bernie's staffers answer that question?
In Nazi Germany, after the fall of the Nazi Party, there was a ton of the populace that was Nazified. I mean, like, Germany had to spend billions of dollars re-educating people. to not be Nazis. Like, we're probably going to have to do the same thing here. And that's kind of what Bernie's like, like, hey, free education for everybody, because we're going to have to teach you not to be a Nazi. There's a reason Joseph Stalin had gulags, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, gulags were a lot better than like what like the CIA has told us that they were. Like, people were actually paid a living wage in gulags. They had conjugal visits in gulags. Gulags were actually meant for like re-education. So that was the intention of gulags, right? It's like not only to like remove the like people that were like insidious to the state from the state, like, hey, you guys are all causing problems. You're like working against the revolution. We're just going to remove you and put you in Siberia, where you learn the value of like being a comrade.
That was Kyle Jurek, who was a field organizer for the Sanders campaign. And he was caught on camera spouting this ridiculous nonsense by another journalist from Project Veritas. James O'Keefe and Project Veritas are doing incredible work. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking that this guy, Kyle Jurek, is just some radical and Bernie himself doesn't espouse these beliefs. He honeymooned in Russia. He praised bread lines.
You know, it's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
So once they take the guns, if people still don't comply, the next step is what? Re-education. That's what they envision for gun owners, or people who want to keep what they earn, or people who think that we shouldn't pay for health care for illegal aliens, or people who think that we shouldn't have open borders. And this guy is displaying a stunning lack of understanding of history. Because the primary goal of gulags was not re-education. It was to punish political dissidents and criminals, punish them with forced labor. They didn't get conjugal visits. Yeah, later on in the program, some of them did get paid, kinda, if they happened to survive the ridiculous conditions they were in. But there was no plan to let these people out. Now, when I first saw these clips, I thought to myself, this guy isn't alone. He's right in line with Bernie and all the other leftists. They won't admit it. But in the video, he admits that they can't say it publicly, but anyone paying attention knows it's their true agenda. Most leftists, though, don't want to even admit it to themselves. They actually have convinced themselves, they've fooled themselves into thinking that the Democrat Socialists of America, or socialists in general, they just want everything to be equal. They will soon find out if anyone like Bernie or Warren were to gain power. They will soon find out that that boot is going to land on their necks equally as hard as it will anyone else's. But I encourage you to go to Project Veritas and check out the videos. It's in 2 parts, and it is somewhat refreshing to hear someone on the inside say what we all already believed. But it's also frightening to get confirmation that we were right. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and take another quick break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about the Trump Derangement Syndrome epidemic that is sweeping social media. And then we'll get you out of here with some epic stupidity. Trump Derangement Syndrome, TDS, has reached epidemic proportions, especially on social media. Now, the story that I saw ignite this new flare-up was the story about the Government Accountability Office finding that President Trump broke the law by withholding aid from Ukraine. On one post from a friend of mine, he mocked the idea that the GAO could be part of the deep state. But of course it's a part of the deep state. Obama withheld aid 7 times, one of which was to Ukraine. Now, I only remember one instance of the GAO issuing some sort of report about President Obama breaking the law, and that was when he made that trade for Bo Bergdahl. But when he withheld aid from Ukraine, and of course, in these discussions, when I bring up Obama or Clinton, invariably, people will either say, well, they're not in office now, which is true, or they'll pull the whataboutism card. I hate the term whataboutism because it's lazy and it implies that it's somehow trivial. But it's not, because it's about standards. It's about principles. And so if you're going to hold one person to this standard, then you have to hold anyone else who does the same thing to that same standard. But they will never, ever do that. They'll just dismissively mock it with some Obama or Clinton joke and prattle on about whataboutisms. That's really just par for the course. I have seen so many people who have such contempt for President Trump, but can never articulate any logical basis for it. I see comments where people say that it's delusional to believe that the Trump administration has overseen any improvements, and that because people are in favor of these quote-unquote so-called improvements, they're justifying President Trump's bad behavior. Okay. What's so-called about record low unemployment for black people? What's so-called about wages going up? What's so-called about the labor participation rate going up? And some people are rejecting the idea that mainstream media is in the tank for the left. They actually said that ratings is the driving force behind the news coverage, and it doesn't lean in the direction of one ideology or another. Come on. MSDNC is upfront about their political bias. And CNN just had to pay Nick Sandmann what is very likely a tidy sum. They haven't made it public yet. But they're paying him because they let their ideology color their reporting on him and his classmates at Covington High School. Now, I have to be on social media, and I have to engage because I want the exposure for the show. And I want to debate, not because I think I can persuade any of these leftists. I know I can't. But lurkers on posts, or people who are not ideologues in one direction or another, could possibly be swayed by a logical, fact-based argument. And when you read the threads, it's blatantly obvious that these people just breeze right by facts and data and go right to the emotional argument. And then there's the true Christians can't possibly support President Trump and call themselves Christians. I grew up in church. I'm not a biblical scholar, though, by any stretch of the imagination. But that sounds like one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard. President Trump has been doing everything he can to support religious freedom, taking steps to defund Planned Parenthood, which is basically mass murdering babies at a ridiculous pace. So how can you as a Christian support someone who supports Planned Parenthood, who supports the mass murder of babies? Come on. President Trump is doing everything he can to undo the damage done by Obama. And to be fair, President Bush too. His handling of 9/11 and its aftermath, I think, was good, was better than good, was great. But everything else was pretty lackluster, to be polite. Not the unmitigated disaster that was Obama, but not good. But these people say that the booming economy, low unemployment, higher wages is not worth the trade-off of having a liar or a misogynist or serial abuser of women and the damage that he's done to the Constitution. Come on. He's lied, yes. He's exaggerated. I understand that. I get that. I'm not excusing that behavior. But he is a politician. Getting mad, I know a lot of people say he's an outsider. He's not. As soon as he decided to run for office, he became a politician. And getting mad at a politician for lying is like getting mad at water for being wet or the sky for being blue. It's just dumb. Now, there is no justification for some of the things he said, some of the things he's done, but there's no evidence that he's hurt any of the women who have accused him of sexual assault. In every instance, it's been basically proven the exact opposite. Now, these people who are Christians and won't support President Trump, I don't doubt their sincerity, and I'm sure they really believe and are being taught that they can't support President Trump for those reasons. But I think they're fooling themselves, because they're never going to be satisfied with any elected official if that's the standard that they're setting for themselves, because they can't in good conscience vote for anyone, because we're all flawed in one way or another. So if you expect your elected officials to live up to this lofty biblical standard, all you're going to do is set yourself up for a huge disappointment. All right, y'all. It's been a while since we did this on the show, but when I heard this audio, I knew it had to be added to the collection of
The Adventures of the Galactically Stupid.
So the first one for 2020 comes to us from, obviously, CNN and Erin Burnett. And I'm not even going to bother to try and set it up. Just listen.
Iran itself continues to have even its entire parliament chant death to America. It's not as if it's a surprise that Iran has been coordinating and targeting American interests throughout the Middle East.
I will say, I was in Tehran when they were chanting death to America once. I was at a rally. The people couldn't have been more friendly to me personally as an American. It sort of felt like a thing and a trope as opposed to anything that actually was seriously meant and considered.
Well,
I understand your point,
Aaron,
but having been there, my experience was quite
Aaron,
different.
your entire life, Iran, pretty much your entire life, just by a few years, has chanted death to America.
Did she really just say that chants of death to America felt like a trope? Now, the guy that she was talking to was Representative Mike Turner, and he politely tried to correct her, but he just should have let her have it, because that was ridiculous on so many levels. I mean, come on. They've been chanting death to America since 1979. They want America wiped. They want America and Israel wiped off the map. What? She's a moron. Well, folks, that's our show. There was a lot more I wanted to get to, but unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. Check us out on Spreaker, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast from. Download, share with your friends. Leave a review. Let us know what you think. Your feedback is much appreciated. You can also find us on social media. As we just talked about, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Parlay. It's at the LibertyCast on all 4 platforms. So hit us up. But again, thank you all for listening. And until next time, keep your head on a swivel and stay safe, everybody.